Did any of the following actually happen as described in these scary stories? I saw a dog-headed Sasquatch. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I saw something that might have been a Dogman, or it might have been a Sasquatch. It's kind of a bit involved, so I'm just going to start at the beginning and tell you about it so that maybe you can tell me what I saw. Actually, before I even get started, I do want to say that I am aware of what a googway is, or is supposed to be. I did not know about it at the time of my experience, but since I've been reading whatever I can find about both Dogman and Bigfoot, I suppose that I might have witnessed a googway, but this didn't just have an elongated snout. It had dog ears up on top of its head, not on the sides, the way humans and ape-like creatures do. So I personally don't think it was a googway, but I'm willing to have my mind changed if you know more about this than I do. So this all started because I was camping alone. I've heard several stories on your channel about solo campers, and that might be why I'm sending this to you now. I don't personally agree that one should never camp alone, although you are right to warn people about the dangers inherent in it. I grew up in Chicago on the bad side of town, and I've never in my life felt, quote, safe, unquote. To me, the end could always come at any moment. Does it matter if it comes during a mugging, during a home invasion, or out in the wild where at least my remains will feed the local wildlife? To me, it's all the same thing. And since I accept danger as my constant companion, I'm braced for the worst each time I venture out alone to hike and camp. I would not suggest you copy me, though, unless your experiences and mindset mirror mine. I'm a person who craves solitude, and the finest moments of my existence have come when I was completely at one with nature and all of existence, entirely alone in the mountains and forests. If you want to follow that path, you'd better become an expert camper with years of experience first. Also, get yourself a GPS locator beacon so you can be found if you get lost. And always, always tell someone where you're going and when you expect to get back. Blah, 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 I can hear you say. Tell us about the cryptid you ran into. Okay, I'll get started properly right now. Now, I don't really know exactly where I was other than in the wilderness of Canada north of Quebec City. There's a nature preserve over there. I think I was inside that. I don't like to check the GPS until I'm getting sick of nature and thinking about returning to civilization. The night before I want to head back, I'll check out my GPS and maps and start to plot how to return to the human world. But until then, I like to wander where fate and chance will take me. So, I was in a small field about the size of a baseball infield, actually, and I was surrounded on all sides by a very dense woods. It was the summer of 2020, and it had been warm that week, but not uncomfortably warm. That night, I didn't feel like going to bed after dinner, so I sat by the fire just staring out into the utter blackness that was in every direction past those flames. And then, I was pretty certain I was seeing some kind of a light moving around in the woods across from my tent and campfire. I couldn't tell if I was actually seeing it though, as it was an odd sort of light, and may have been an optical illusion. I could see it better out of the corner of my eye than I could when I tried to look directly at it, which is another reason I was uncertain that it was truly there. I have to admit, it made me nervous. Everything I can't explain right away makes me nervous. I thought it might be a kind of a flashlight, and that I might have a human visiting me soon. But the lights faded away and they didn't come back. I was in the process of forgetting about it when there was the sound of rustling leaves and branches, and I could sense something in those trees and foliage directly across from me. Grabbing my flashlight, I shone it in that direction, and I thought I saw a large wild dog, or a large escaped pet or something. It was a really big canine, but it was unmistakably a dog. I wondered if he was hungry, and I tossed some of my uneaten dinner sandwich in the direction of the bush he was hiding behind. Rather than making a new friend, though, This action seemed to offend the beast, and it burst through that bush so forcefully and so quickly that I almost fainted dead away. It seemed to have started down on all fours in a kind of a runner's sprint, but it rose to a bipedal run as it thundered toward me. I fell over backward, leaning against my tent behind the still crackling campfire. Before I knew it, I was staring up at the dog's head, which rested on the massively wide shoulders of a Sasquatch. I remember feeling like screaming, but nothing at all would come out. I was stunned into silence and awe, but above all, I was terrified. This dog-headed Bigfoot had to have been 7 or 8 feet tall, and it was standing just on the other side of that fire. I could even smell it, and it smelled like the zoo. The monster creature screamed at me. It didn't bark at me. I mean, it was a shout generated from a dog-like mouth, but it was more like a human or ape scream than any other kind of vocalization. I shrunk back and made myself small, averting my eyes from making eye contact with the creature. Instead, I studied its immense feet, which were long and wide, like Bigfoot feet I'd seen on TV and the internet. It did not have the backward bent legs that people usually associate with Dogman, so I don't suppose that was what this was. This was a dog-headed Sasquatch. I remember how much I wanted to turn around and dive into my tent and zip it up, but I don't suppose I had the courage to move a single muscle. I made myself as small as I could, and I just stared down at the ground and at that massive monster's feet. It shouted at me so loudly that the ground shook and my ears ached. I expected at any second that something terrible was going to start to happen. I was never so scared in my life, and I never was so sad either. I was accepting that this was the end. This was the event my friends and family had always warned me would happen if I kept going out camping alone. I had taken my chances, and this time I had taken it one camping trip too far. It had been a good life, and I felt intensely grateful to have lived it. I prayed internally, asking that it be over quickly. Just please don't drag it out, I requested. I saw the creature lift one of its huge feet, and I expected it to come down on top of me. The moment had come, and I braced myself for impact. His foot stomped down all right, but not on top of me. It landed where it had been picked up from, generating a cloud of dust in the air. I remember shaking all over uncontrollably. The huge Dogman, or Bigfoot, was going to drive me crazy before actually terminating my existence. Man, I was at the lowest point in my entire life. Through tear-stained eyes, I saw the massive legs of the creature sort of squat down, and I thought that meant it was going to do something to me with its hands. The creature had squatted down as the first step in a huge leap. I screamed in terror and closed my eyes. The creature was going to land on me with both feet, except that didn't happen either. I don't know how long I screamed, how long I held my hands protectively over my head, how long I anticipated the lights going out. Finally, and forever. It felt like an eon, but was more likely a few seconds. When I realized I was not only not dead, but I wasn't even injured in the slightest, I poked my weepy head up and looked all around. I couldn't see the creature anywhere, but I heard a sound from directly behind me and the tent. Standing and turning in a split second, I finally understood. The dog-headed Bigfoot had leaped over my campfire, over me, and over my small tent, then continued on into the woods behind me. I suppose I had made a big enough display of pathetic submissiveness to satisfy its ego, and it wasn't threatened enough by me any longer to bother doing away with me. I had won. I had humiliated myself and looked like a fool, but I had lived to tell the story about whatever the heck that thing was. I don't remember much after that. I mean, I think I put out the fire and went to sleep in my tent. When I woke up in the morning, I dug out the GPS and I figured out how to get back to human civilization. I had never felt defeated before when returning from a hiking and camping expedition, but the way that giant man thing with the dog head had treated me, I knew I'd better leave as soon as the sun had risen. If I stayed another night, there was no guarantee that this self-declared landlord of the area would be so nice as to let me live a second time. I apologize that I did not write down my GPS coordinates before leaving, but I still don't understand why anyone would even want to know. You should stay away. I feel lucky that I got out. It was in the area of the Laurentides Wildlife Reserve or the Jacques Cartier National Park, maybe. I do think Googway are reported in that general vicinity, but Googway are also reported to eat everything in their path. This creature clearly did not eat me. Also, none of the images I have seen meant to represent Googway look like what I saw. They depict ape-like heads with extended fang-filled snouts. This creature had a long snout like a dog, not like a baboon or something. And like I said, it had pointed ears up on top of its head. So I really just don't think this was a Googway, or at least I think it had to have been a different kind of one than is usually described on the internet. I love on your channel when the stories end with the storyteller saying that they're now too afraid to go hunting or camping. Nothing could be further from the case with me though. I did need a couple of months off, I admit it, but I was hiking through the snow again before the end of the year. One thing is certain though, I only camp south of Quebec City now. And whenever possible, I camp in the USA instead of Canada. I know you guys have your cryptids too, but I'm willing to take my chances with them because up in Canada, I saw a dog-headed Sasquatch. Don't go anywhere, we've got another all-new Dogman story for you in a second. But first, please allow me to thank today's executive producer, Michelle Rich. Michelle. We think she's swell. We'd rather fight than switch. From Michelle Rich. Please join us in thanking Michelle Rich for making this episode possible. In exchange for her kind contributions, we share with her the links to our secret uncensored Dogman stories far too wild to tell on this channel. We'd love to share them with you too. Just do what Michelle Rich did and join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Or click the join link below this or any of our videos. Either way, you're in the club. And now, for today's second of two scary Dogman stories. And we call this one, I Played Fetch with Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I have one cryptid sighting that happened to me in my life, and it was a Dogman sighting. To say that it was unexpected would be an understatement, as this is not your typical Dogman story. This happened to me about 5 years ago, or at least it will be 5 years this coming summer. I was dating my first really serious girlfriend, who we can call Cara Dune, because she looks something like Gina Carano. Not exactly, but close enough for this story. And she was as nice a person as I ever met, even though she was kind of a tough chick, just like the Cara Dune character used to be on that TV show that I vow never to watch again. Cara was the first girl that I liked more than she liked me, and she's the only person who ever broke up with me that I still liked afterward. We keep in touch to some degree still today, although we're definitely not close any longer. I have to be honest, I would get back with her in a second, but she's getting married, or she hopes to if our insect overlords ever deign to allow us mere humans to hold large weddings again. Maybe I'll get lucky and she'll get bored of that guy before churches are legal again, and then I might have a second chance with her. But I'm not holding out much hope for that. When this all happened, I was still very much in love with her, and she was very much in like with me. We were living in Roscommon Township, and we had wandered into the Roscommon State Forest area on that day with my medium-sized shaggy black and white long-haired dog named Happy, who was still pretty young back then and very energetic. We both had fun with him initially, but it reached a point where we found a nice, comfortable rock to sit on in a clearing in the woods with nobody else around. We wanted some human being time, and Happy did not understand that. I picked up a stick and threw it so he'd go chase it and I could pay attention to Kara. Happy ran and got the stick and brought it back in his mouth, dropping it at my feet, wagging his tail so energetically that his whole butt swayed left and right. He barked loudly at me to throw the stick again for him. Kara and I took turns picking up the stick, all wet with dog spit, and throwing it for the pup's entertainment. I started to run out of patience because Kara was paying more attention to the dog than to me. Heck, I was paying more attention to the dog than to Kara. I would even go so far as to say that I had begun to feel a bit jealous. When it was my turn to throw the stick the next time, I threw it long and hard, as far as I could manage to throw, and it ended up rolling past the tree line into the edge of the woods. That ought to hold him, I thought, and I turned my attention back to my girlfriend. She was more concerned with the welfare of the dog than my romantic intentions, though. As I tried to talk her up using everything my older brother had taught me about romancing a woman, she just watched the dog with concern over my shoulder. I'm not sure she was listening to me at all, and I was moving toward being in a foul mood. Suddenly, Kara stood up and screamed, and I could hear Happy sounding very unhappy. Turning around, I saw my dog running back toward us, its tail between its legs, yiping in a kind of fear I had never seen him express before. But that wasn't what Kara was screaming about. No, that was a reaction to what was running up behind little Happy. What had caused the brave Kara to become so frightened was the huge, hairy, cryptid Dogman that was running on after Happy. I say dog man and not just dog because although this thing appeared to be a canine, it was running along on its two hind legs in the way a man would. And in its mouth, the stick that we had been throwing. I tell you, it looked much smaller in his long snout, clenched between his prehistoric-looking canine teeth. This was not the kind of dogman with a human-style broad chest and shoulders. It looked more like a giant dark gray wolf that ran on its hind legs, with its front paws held together as in a praying or begging position. It had to have been 7 feet from its toes to its ears, as I'm 6 foot tall, but I had the sense that it was much larger than I was. I grabbed up Happy as soon as he was within reach, and both Kara and I bolted back toward where we had seen the closest bunch of people on our way in. We ran through a pretty thick woods, both of us getting scratched up, and my poor dog whining like it was the end of the world. None of the three of us knew that it wasn't the end of the world, at least if we let that dogman catch up to us. We could hear him coming up from behind, knocking branches off as he sped toward our location. What was going to happen if he got to us before we got to safety? The crying of my dog, who seemed heavier to carry with each step, suggested an answer that would not be a very nice conclusion to our day. I remember entering a field and seeing a group of people having a picnic. I let Happy down to run and we all ran toward those 4 or 5 people. They eyed us with some trepidation as we approached, and I was far too out of breath to explain anything to them. Kara clued them in about what was happening, and they told us they had just seen a park ranger not 5 minutes prior. One of them ran off to fetch the ranger, while Kara and I collapsed to the grass to catch our breath. The guy came back in a few minutes saying he failed to find anyone, but the dogman had never emerged from the woods behind us, and it seemed like the immediate threat of danger was over. I wanted to report our incident to somebody, but Kara didn't want anything to do with monsters and cryptids. She made me promise not to tell anyone about what had happened, which I didn't. I think that was step 1 in our breakup, although she always insisted it was not. I am not trying to say that she blamed me for the monster's appearance, but I am trying to say that my desire to go public with what happened demonstrated to her how different the two of us are. To her, this was something to hide as though in shame. I, on the other hand, was so excited to still be alive Plus, I had always wanted to see a monster. In truth, I wanted to see Bigfoot, but trust me, this was at least as exciting an encounter to survive. And so that's the true story of the day in which I played fetch with Dogman.
Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it. You can become a channel member by clicking the join link below. Then you can check our community page to find the links to 10 hours or more of secret, uncensored Dogman stories too wild to be told on this channel. Your other option is to join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. That's Peter's homemade club, where he will personally email you the links as well as occasional secret club messages. You may also be included as an executive producer in a future episode. If you have a scary experience you want to tell us about, you can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com, or else call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LESS-SCARY. The machine cuts off every few minutes, so if you have a long story, please keep calling back and we'll piece it together later on. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.